So the earliest evidence of boxing was established in 688 BC. It's one of the most dangerous sports where two half-naked men get in a ring and punch each other until the other one hits the canvas. It's where real men settle their differences in combat, potentially risking their health, all in the name of pride in the face of mental anguish and defeat. And then we have YouTube boxing, where skinny TikTokers and YouTubers, except for Salt Poppy, with similar amounts of subscribers and followers, duke it out to see who can squeeze more pay-per-views, so they can ultimately brag how they knocked out a basketball player. You would think that this wouldn't do well, but actually jump-started the careers of many young influencers today. Contrary to traditional boxing, it's almost expected to be comical in the sense that they actually don't know how to fight. But the captivating part is like seeing celebrities doing something that they don't normally do. Like, can you imagine Timothée Chalamet and Tom Holland got into a boxing ring? Like, that shit would sell millions. But the main difference is that KSI needs the clout for his hair transplant surgery, and Timothy needs Zendaya. This all started with a relatively unknown and underground YouTuber named KSI. You know, you might have heard of him, 10 mil subs, nothing too crazy. And some random angry British geezer. And one day they got into a fight over some tea and crumpets or something, or whatever British people fight over. And at the time, YouTube diss tracks were the main form of settling beef. But instead of a verbal altercation, they decided to have a physical one. So deciding to not sustain life-threatening brain injuries like a fucking coward, they decided to wear headgear and gloves that were basically soft as pillows. So here's how the fight went. So Joe Weller basically did his best impression of a training dummy, and KSI is basically like a basketball player trying to box for the first time. Nate Robinson. But at least he threw a punch. This was scheduled for 6 3-minute rounds, and KSI won a minute and a half into the third round by the way of TKO. Wow, what a surprise. I mean, Weller's actually salty that he didn't win, even though bro didn't even throw a punch at him. So then, more irrelevant YouTubers showed up, namely Logan Paul and Jake Paul. Basically, the whole internet hated the Paul brothers for Jake Paul uploading the Grammy Award-winning It's Everyday Bro and Logan Paul's Japan incident. So it was only natural for KSI to call out the Paul brothers.
Jake Paul, Logan Paul, any of the Pauls, I don't care.
And so the fight happened. KSI was set to fight Logan Paul and his younger, actual irrelevant brother Deji, fighting Jake Paul. And so they decided to amp up the intensity a little bit. They were still using headgear, but now they were using more compact 12-ounce gloves. In case I knew this would be an entirely different fight and that Logan Paul was no Joe Weller, he knew that Logan would actually punch, and also he would punch back a lot harder. And also Logan was several inches taller than the supposed 6-foot KSI, 5'11". And Logan also had more mass, and a longer jab, and also some high school wrestling experience that made this fight tilt in Logan's favor. So once again, both fighters talked a lot of smack.
After the fight, you can go fucking suck his mom. Yeah, go suck my mom? Yeah, suck it.
But once they got into the ring, they basically still didn't know how to fight. So the fight ended in a majority draw, which brought on a lot of speculation that the fight was rigged. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, while all this was happening, Jake Paul beat the absolute brakes off Deji. Alright, so at this point, neither one of these guys were going to back down, as both their egos were literally as big as KSI's forehead. So keep in mind that both these guys had a massive social media presence, so the stakes were actually really high. Both KSI and Logan knew that the winner's fan base would eternally clown on the loser, especially with KSI's subreddit fiending to flame literally anyone they could reach. Also, KSI's little bro got absolutely demolished by Jake Paul, so KSI was fighting for the Olatunji name. This time, they had no headgear and 10-ounce gloves, and up to this point, all the fights were considered amateur boxing matches until this one. In their professional debut, KSI looked a lot better in terms of his conditioning, but his technique was still kind of subpar. Once again, the match went the distance, and it was up to the judges' scorecards to decide who would win. However, before this, there's a point deduction in favor of KSI from an illegal rabbit punch that resulted in a 2-point deduction for Logan. And this is basically the deciding factor for
the winner by split decision,
Now it's even Steven between the Olatunjis and the Pauls, and Mr. Everyday Bro was not happy about this. They basically went back and forth calling each other out, saying, "Sign the contract, sign the contract." But in the end, KSI used his trash music as an excuse to avoid the fight entirely. Jake Paul then went on an absolute rampage on retired basketball stars and MMA fighters, asserting his dominance on a 39-year-old Ben Askren, who looks like he was paid to take the fall. But KSI wasn't gonna let this slide either. Bro built his credibility off of equally trash opponents from the likes of boxing legends Swarms and Luis Alcaraz Pineda. Wait, what's this? Jake fights an actual boxer? I guess he got bored of basketball players, so instead he went for the reigning heavyweight champion, Tyson Fury's half-brother, Tommy Fury. And this dude is no joke. Like, this dude is built like Geodude from Pokemon. And as much as everyone clowned on Jake, he actually had proper technique and also was undefeated at this point. So he had the credibility to fight the also undefeated Tommy Fury. And this is a pretty good matchup as both of them had a lot to lose. Like, I'm pretty sure Tyson Fury would disown Tommy if he actually lost to the Disney Channel kid. But in all honesty, this is a pretty close match as both men came out hard, pause. But Fury got the slight edge over Paul for every round other than the third. But surprisingly, in the last round, Paul actually landed a knockdown on Fury, which was huge for Paul. However, in the end, Fury still managed to outbox Jake, but it was far closer than anyone could have imagined.
Tommy TNT.
So now, KSI is ecstatically munching on his tea and crumpets, watching this result, and now he wants a piece of Fury. Pause. After several more irrelevant wins, KSI was finally ready to avenge the Olatunji name, since, Deji got his shit handed to him by Jake. And if KSI beat Tommy, that would indirectly mean he's better than Jake. But unfortunately, Tommy's massive traps, pause, were not going to allow that to happen. KSI went at Tommy with a lot of power and his training really showed his stamina. Unfortunately, it seemed like his technique receded like his hairline as he threw wild overhand rights, did jumping jacks, and hugged Tommy like it was goddamn Valentine's Day. People actually thought KSI was robbed of the win as it seemed like he landed more punches. But the only people robbed that night were the viewers who actually paid to watch the fight. In reality, Tommy actually did land more punches and showed that neither Mr. Olatunji nor Mr. Everyday Bro was good enough to defeat an actual boxer. Oh yeah, and also on the undercard of this fight, this washed MMA fighter Dylan Dennis absolutely clowned on Logan Paul's fiance. Until Logan beat the brakes off him too.